Podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan. Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we're back again to inspire you. We want to give you more knowledge, more information, plus. We just want to add to your life. We want to make it better than it was before you listened to this podcast. We have an amazing guest today. Amazing guest. Her name's Nicole Balogh, and she's going to talk to us all about alchemical healing, shamanism, and all the different things that led her to where she's at now. It's going to be an amazing podcast, people. I'm telling you, every episode it just gets better and better and better. I get better. We get better because we're learning, we're integrating new information. So, but before we dive in with the wonderful Nicole Balogh, we just have to ask you to do this one thing. Okay, ready? Follow us on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. It's, they make you put the underscores in there. You try to differentiate yourself. It's this digital world, this digital frontier. I didn't write it. It's not how I would have done it. But here we are at midnight_on_earth. Follow us on Instagram. Go to Spotify. Go to all the platforms, any of the platforms. We're everywhere. Follow us. Tell a friend. Midnight on Earth. Okay, so now here we go. We're going to dive in with this wonderful goddess that we have with us. Here's her incredible biography. Nicole Balogh has been teaching yoga for 17 years and practicing the healing arts and shamanism for 15 years. Initially, she apprenticed with a shaman for 5 years and practiced both Reiki and Quantum Touch, but did not find her true calling till she trained with Nicki Scully in the shamanic healing art form called Alchemical Healing in 2010. The power and results of this work led her to become a teacher of this modality in 2014. Nick also has a passion for plants and herbal medicine, as we do here, and has trained in traditional and energetic herbal medicine. She lives close to nature in a rural setting in southern Ontario, Canada, where she grows and preserves much of her and her family's food and medicine. And that's the way to do it. We know that's just the way to go. Nick teaches yoga, meditation, alchemical healing, shamanic journeying, and shamanic mysteries, as well as various workshops that support all of these practices. Her goal in all that she offers is to empower and share tools with people so that they can do their own work and heal themselves. We're going to talk so much about this. Holding sacred space for the unfolding of whatever needs to arise in order for physical, spiritual, or emotional health of an individual or a group is Nick's intention. This allows for any of the tools and skills she has in her medicine bag to be available, and she is grateful to have the tools to share with people in order to manage the challenging changes and turmoil that come with the cycles of growth we experience. Hello, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
And that was an incredible bio. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate you being here. People want to learn. People need more information. And you have the information that people need today.
Well, I have the information that has made me grow into who I am now, so I can share that.
Yes, and that's the thing. And we're all so similar as humans. There's really not much that differentiates us when it really boils down to how we live our daily lives as humans. So what you learned is something that we can learn. What your path has led you to may influence other people's paths and might lead them to similar things. So here we are. And I'm so glad that you're here. So let's talk about what you're about. Let's talk about yoga. Do you still practice yoga?
Yes, I teach yoga every week.
Okay, so you're still teaching yoga.
It's a basis, I think, along with, it keeps me grounded. It keeps my physical body healthy, and also any of the other spiritual work I feel or have experienced, that you really need some body work and movement to ground it and integrate it. So it's a key component.
So that's really a foundational thing. Yoga is the foundational, recharges the body, recharges the spirit, and allows you to kind of branch out and interact with these other forms of teaching. It's like a good foundation, like you were saying. But I want to talk about you. I want to talk about your life. And clearly you're a spiritual person. You've been studying these things, and you were referred to me, actually, by Shamanic Journeys in Eugene. They were a school, I believe, that was started by Nicki Scully and her friends. And they wanted me to talk to you because they felt like that your information, what you represent, is also what they represent. But I want to know, how old were you when you first started to develop a spiritual perspective? Like, when did you start to become a spiritual person?
Well, as human beings, we generally get our ass kicked into that. So let me see, I guess that would be in my early 20s. I was ill, right? So we always have, most of us experience trauma or illness of some kind that force us to make changes and look at things differently. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in my early 20s. And because of, a couple of years of no results in the medical field, it forced me to look elsewhere and make changes in my life and seek out alternative therapies and give them a try, and then experience them and how they healed me.
So you had chronic fatigue syndrome, and conventional medicine wasn't doing anything for you. So you're looking out, you're looking for some sort of relief, and you started to become attracted to spiritual things because of that. So conventional medicine failed, and this was the bridge to spirituality for you.
Complete truth, yeah.
And then what were some of the things early on that attracted you or inspired you during that time?
I experienced some homeopathy and naturopathic doctor and yoga. Yoga was a gentle way for me to re-enter into my body and become more aware of what was happening there and what my own needs were. And then become quite more aware of then what I was, how I was living, what I was putting in my body. So all of it together created sort of this tapestry of
the beginning
awareness and growth. Yeah, to make changes in my life. So I had to change what I was doing as a profession. I had to wrap my head around, what's important in my life and where I'm going to put my energy, and what energies I allow into my life as well.
So when you went and got that, you started to research these alternative forms of healing. When did you start to feel the calling that you wanted to do more than integrate what you were experiencing? You actually wanted to put that out there more as in a teaching sense.
Well, that's easy. That was having my first baby. So I was in the corporate world still when I had my son when I was 30, and he was a catalyst. I chose to not work 12, 18-hour days and run the rat race and actually become a mother and stay home with him. And so that's when I chose to train as a yoga teacher. That was the first shift into teaching and diving more deeply.
So was it the birth experience itself, or what was it about the birth of your son? Just caring for a new life, or was it even more?
Yeah, it was the realization of caring for that new life and the responsibility that it brought, and what I wanted in my heart to give him.
Right. You didn't want to sacrifice his childhood in the corporate work world, knowing that you would be
Yes,
required to be there pretty much 24/7 on call. And you knew that it was
exactly.
a time for a
Yeah.
change. But the birth experience can be, I mean, as a male of this human species, I don't get to experience that. But my partner, I have children, and I understand that it can be a very powerful psychedelic experience when you're giving birth. Was there something about the birth experience itself, like actually giving birth, that changed you?
That changes everyone.
Including the dads out there. But what did it make you more spiritual, that experience? Did it feel like you were tapping into something bigger?
Absolutely. It's, well, obviously there's a heart opening there like no other, and a connection like no other with another human being. And it also, there was, a little bit of trauma involved with the birth, which also led me into shifting. So then I started teaching prenatal yoga and couples prenatal workshops to share with them in helping to create a better birth experience. So that took me into a whole area of working with people and changing the birth experience for people. So it definitely moved me into a deeper place with what I learned and what I shared after.
And were you already into yoga before you had your son? Because you had the chronic fatigue issue. So that was before you had your child, right?
Right. So I was just practicing yoga. And then when he was 6 months old, I chose not to go back to work and take the yoga teacher training, and that way I could choose my hours for when my husband was home, and so one of us was always with him, and so I was a lot less hours of working, but still out there, which is important too, to connect with others.
Sure.
And right, because you get sort of lost in a world with a baby.
Yeah, it becomes its own little universe, doesn't it?
Yeah, it becomes your whole universe. So you do need that balance of connection point with others.
So 2 years into your yoga training, it looks like you began to start shamanistic training. Now, what attracted you to shamanism, and when did that come into your life?
So it's part of my nature, part of my mother's background is French Canadian, North American Indian. And it was something, I grew up Catholic, but moved away from that fairly quickly, but was always seeking and searching. And it was that nature-based spirituality that drew me. I was interested in it, but didn't actually pursue it. And again, it was my son is my major catalyst. So my son, when he was 2, I knew I was always a feeler. I was sensing that there was a presence in my house, but my son could definitely see it. And so then I sought help for clearing the presence that was in our house. And that's how I met the shaman that I ended up working with for 5 more years.
So wait a second. Let's back this up a little bit. So you felt a presence in your house. Now, is this a house you're currently in Ontario?
Yes, it is. And it was a really old homestead, and it was the original farmer that was still in the house.
So you felt this ghost. I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
You felt this ghost in your house. You found out later it's an old farmer, and you're feeling, what were some of the feelings that you felt when you were like, that caused your awareness to be, in a place where you knew it was there?
Well, my first sense is feel always. So it was just this sense of a presence and a little bit of unease. And I kind of just, blew it off until I saw the fear or reaction in my 2-year-old when he was sensing it.
Holy cow.
Which was, yeah. So it was kind of like he was let's say a bachelor, older gentleman that was just wondering what we were doing in his house.
Yeah. He's like, hey, what are you guys doing here? Like, not realizing.
Yeah.
Now, just
Yeah.
we don't want to go too much on a tangent, but I want to ask you as a spiritual person, like, what do you think a ghost is? Is it the residual energy of an ego that didn't cross over, or what do you think a ghost is?
Well, I actually do that work. I help souls cross regularly, let's say.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. It's a phenomenon there's so many lost souls out there. So basically, what that is, a ghost is a soul that has not crossed, that did not shift into its next journey back into where it belongs, wherever you might imagine that to be.
So is it like they saw the light and decided not to go? They're like, there's a light over there. I'm just going to stay right here.
Well, yeah, and the reason, most often, there's a few reasons why that happens. First of all, there's the first one's unfinished business.
Okay.
Right? Can't go because I've got this unfinished business. The other is something traumatic, like like an accident or a quick death or a drug overdose or something that they just don't even realize that they are dead, that they've passed. Yeah.
So you're feeling this ghost in your house. You're wondering how to get rid of this. Who recommended a shaman as the method of getting rid of the spirit? Or how did you find that out?
I was just trying to remember that, actually. So the shaman had an office in the same building as my naturopath. So
wow.
So I just saw the sign on the door and went,
That's
amazing. I need to go
amazing.
talk to this person. Yeah.
And then what was their reaction? It's just like another day at work for them, right? They're just like, oh yeah, sure. You're my 2:00 now.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is what I do now. So
right.
Yeah.
So the shaman comes, and were they able to effectively remove the spirit? And how did you determine it was the farmer?
She did at the time. I didn't have those skills at the time. She did, and yes, effectively removed. And when we say effectively removed, it's compassionate for everyone involved. Sometimes the spirit is sort of attached to a place, like this case. Sometimes a spirit attaches to a person, or an object, like an old rocking chair or something like that. They spend a lot of time in. But always the intention is compassionate for the spirit. And so because they're lost, they need to find their way back home. So that is the work in helping them return back to where now their soul can evolve.
Right. Yeah. So it's always really positive work, it's healing. It's always healing. It's healing for the spirit. It's healing for the people that live in the home currently, which is in this case you. But then I bet you were pretty impressed by this experience.
Exactly.
And then you wanted to know more about shamanism.
Yep.
So tell me more about that. And then so you're interacting with this wonderful woman, and what was her name?
Susan Taylor.
Okay, Susan Taylor. So you're talking to Susan Taylor. She sends the spirit back to where it needs to go. And now you want to know more about shamanism. Is she teaching classes, or how do you sync up with her?
Yeah. Yes, she was teaching classes, and I hopped right on that train.
Okay. And how long were those classes? And what was the shamanic training from her?
So always the first training in shamanism is introduction to journeying, which I'm actually teaching next week. There's two parts next week and the week after for a whole class.
Okay.
Because that is your the journeying process is the basis for absolutely everything in shamanism. Then it's just intention after that. So your very first foundation is learning how to shamanic journey.
So shamanic journey, when I hear that, what I think of is projecting your consciousness into another dimension, that perhaps the astral dimension or the shamanic dimension, whatever that is, in order to interact with the spirits and information there to try to heal people. Is that kind of correct, or how could that be different?
Yeah, that's pretty close. So definitely, you can call it another dimension, or and in shamanism, there's an understanding that so we're in the middle world here. There's generally three. There's the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world, which is not heaven and hell. It has no likeness to that. It's just different realms, and you find different helper spirits in those realms. It's kind of a different energy. Obviously, upper is more etheric, and lower is more let's call it earthy.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's all about your intention to go. And then that's the whole point, because of the shamanic journey is to teach you a safe way of journeying to somewhere specific for a specific purpose. So your intention is incredibly important, so you don't get lost out there.
So you can, let's say you're learning shamanism, you're learning the journeying. If you don't understand what you're doing, you could short circuit yourself spiritually. What does it mean to get lost, I guess?
Well, there's lots of dimensions and realms out there, so you want to choose where you're going.
Okay.
And also your intention is so key, and who you're meeting, right? So your intention is to meet with those that are helpful spirits, because there are others out there.
Would you say those others are
three parts to a shamanic journey: where you're going, who you're meeting, and what your intention is, which might be just to connect and ask for guidance. It might be to ask for healing for yourself or for others. Usually it starts with yourself. It's always yourself before you decide to share that out.
Right. So, because you can't be an effective shaman unless you're healed yourself.
Yeah, but that's an ongoing process.
It is. It never really ends, right? Isn't that the truth? That truly you're growing, evolving, and healing your entire life. And then hopefully you carry on some of that to your next life.
Absolutely. And I like how your gesture of upward, because that's how I look at it, is it's an ever upward spiral.
Yes.
Right? And, sometimes you're like, haven't I seen this before? But, another layer, and on upward we go again.
And yeah, I just want to touch on something. You said there was spirits on both sides. Are some of those other spirits nefarious? Are they lower astral entities that mean us harm?
There's definitely tricksters or darker energies out there. Unless you've had training in working with them, you don't generally want, and nobody really should be working with them. It would be just managing a situation that ended up being. So that's that's work not many do. And generally most people would never have to worry about that. But if you're going to put yourself out there into other realms, you need to be aware that is a possibility, and set clear intentions to that of what you're doing, and then you'll never have to worry about that.
Oh, that's good. So as long as your intentions are in the right place when you're in these other dimensions, these other realms, then you're not really going to interact with anything lower that may harm you, because your intention's already set. So the shield, you could say, is already in place.
Exactly. And the first thing you do is always meet with an ally. You never go anywhere alone in those realms, right? So you always have an ally that you love and trust, and will help protect you and guide you.
What do you mean by an ally? Is that like a person in the room with you, or a spiritual ally?
No, a spiritual ally.
And then
power animal. Power animals guide.
Okay. Yeah. And you usually connect with your ally right away when you start your journeying?
Absolutely.
Okay. And how do you know that an ally comes to you? You'll just know, right? You see the animal, you see the being. It's all intuitive knowledge, you think?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely intuitive. Everyone works with different senses. So it might be more of a presence and feeling. It depends on, everybody has a different way of perceiving or sensing energy. So sometimes it's more of a feeling and sense. Sometimes, it's all your senses. So visual, of course, we're in such a visual society now. Everybody wants to see it like a movie.
Yeah.
And some do, but not everyone. And so that's actually a key kind of tripping point for some people that aren't visual, is to learn to just open to the other senses, use that felt sense, use that knowing. The knowing is the hardest to trust, because we just think it's another thought that's
right.
Our own. But a very wise woman, actually the herbalist that I work with, once told me that 80% of the incoming that we receive is actually not just our thoughts, but guidance and wisdom and help. So it's not, but it can be hard to discern and trust that until you see the results so often that you just, can turn that part of your brain off and carry on.
Yeah. And then once you kind of develop the, I guess you could say, the skill of acknowledging your own intuition, then it becomes normal. You can differentiate between what's your intuition, what's coming from the divine, and what's just chatter of the mind.
Exactly. And that's all discernment, and discernment is key in actually all of the work that I do. So the first thing you do is, if you're sensing an ally, is to ask them if they're here to help you, and they have to answer. That's the universal law. So, are you here to help me, or are you right? So you make that connection. You get that sort of nod in some way that they're here to help you, and then you interact. So, and you're always in charge. So if you don't feel, if there's a niggly feeling and you're thinking, I'm not sure if this is an ally, you can just say, choose, just like if you were taking a walk and choose not to speak to somebody you saw, you have complete control.
Okay. So you actually do have a lot of personal power in these other realms, seemingly created by the divine, because like you said, these things act by a universal law. So if they're acting by law, then that means the law had to come from somewhere. That design had to come from somewhere, which is so fascinating, because it really opens up the fact that there's so much more to our existence than the three-dimensional linear life that most people lead.
Exactly. And I liked, that resonated with coming into your own power. Because really, I mean, ultimately, that's what you're doing, is the more you interact and the more you learn that, and the more you trust, and the more you realize how much power you actually do have in a somewhat seemingly powerless society or outward reflection of that around us.
And I think it's okay to use that personal power, because I think a lot of our society, especially mainstream religion, kind of tells you to not use your personal power. And if you start to sense or feel those things, that you should instantly turn them off and go pray in the closet or whatever, in order to stop that. But
exactly.
But it's not but the truest sense, it would seem like, would be to develop those things, because there are creator given talents. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. In fact, that's pretty much my goal is to share that with people, because it's so important. It's just we have tremendous power, and yes, the institutions that tend to surround us tend to take power away from us. So we do have so much power. We have the ability to receive our own guidance. We don't need anyone else to do that for us. And as soon as you do that, then you're giving away your own power. Not that it's not, I mean, it's good to have someone to hold your hand every once in a while, but
sure.
ultimately it's coming into your own power where it's at.
Right. Mentors are good too. I've had mentors in my life that have taught me things, and then I've incorporated those things and moved on. And so it's good to have mentors, but sometimes you don't want to you want to take control of yourself. You want to take personal responsibility for all your actions. And then also that includes your own healing and spiritual development. And then once you kind of dial that in, man, is it an amazing experience. But I want to talk more about your shamanistic training. So you're studying under your, and her name was Susan, right? Did I remember that right? Okay. But then at some point you get introduced to Nicki Scully and her methodology. When did that happen? Around 2010, right?
Yeah. So I had been, learning at that point. I had taken all of the courses with the shaman that I was working with, and it just didn't feel complete. It didn't feel a form that was easily acceptable by most people, that it could reach most people. And I just felt like there was this missing piece. So when it was the book, I found Nicki Scully's book, Alchemical Healing. And when I read it, I got so charged and excited, because it was all the elements that I had been working with in various ways was all brought together in a way that you could still use all of your teachings, but through the vehicle of alchemical healing. It was just incredible. So then I waited for an opportunity to do some training with her. And then, so probably about 2 years. I think I had the book and wanted to do the training for about 2 years. And then I finally did, and it just changed my world. So
describe some of Nicki's training and what makes it unique and special.
Wow, that's a big question.
The best you can. If that, because it seemed to really attract you. You got the book, and you, like
Yeah.
you said, you were hot for the book, and it felt very resonant with your spirit and where you were at. So what was it that really touched you there?
I guess the fact that it had, first of all, because I mean, all of my senses are involved now, but I was still developing them at the time. And I got really excited when Nicki said she doesn't see and that she could feel. And I thought, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
And also the fact that it's so, it's more of an art form. It's not a do this, do that, like a lot of the other training in shamanism and Reiki and quantum touch. It was do this specific thing, put your hands in these positions, and that's that. And that it's just this small package, I'm going to call it. And then with Nicki's training, specifically the alchemical healing, there's just 4 rules and 4 principles that set such a solid and safe foundation that from there, the possibilities are infinite. And it's the possibilities, so there's core possibilities in there of extraction in shamanism, which means if an energy has to be removed, transformed in some way, whether that be old trauma or emotion, or, past life experiences, or who knows what. You never know till it shows up. Then there's various ways to, we work with the elements and safely, I guess that's another key piece, is safely transmitting energy. If we're going to be working with energy, we need to be responsible for what we're doing. So if there is a removal of energy, there needs to be a place for it to go. So it either needs to be transformed in some way with an element, go into the light, or sent into the earth. We don't just leave it sitting around for the next person to walk by and get slimed, so to speak.
And that's possible. So if you're doing these healing techniques and you remove this energy, the energy doesn't die. I mean, even science tells you that. So you remove the energy, it's there waiting for the next receiver.
Exactly.
And then how would you transmute that energy in a normal sense? Let's say you remove something that's destructive, but you don't want it to survive. How do you transmute it into something beneficial or different?
With love.
With love.
Everything is love.
So you charge this energy with love and it rewrites it?
Absolutely. Well, yes. Yeah. So with it's like when we were talking about sending a ghost or a lost soul. It's always done with love and to where it belongs. It's just energy. So what it needs is a place to go so that it can be useful again in another way. So when we offer it to the earth, we're offering it as like an offering to the earth with a prayer for its transformation into its highest potential, and then the earth can just use it for itself.
Okay. So then it has a place, but it's no longer destructive.
Exactly.
So I know that there's an Egyptian component to Nicki's teachings, and I know that Egypt is a big part of that. Is the Egyptian part equally as important to you?
Yes, it's become that way since alchemical healing, and I've developed a strong relationship with the Egyptian pantheon and the Egyptian mysteries. I worked with the spirit allies before then through the shamanic work that I had done. And it's actually kind of funny because, really when we're working with spirit allies, a lot of times what we're doing is working with archetypical energies, right? So let's call it the mother energy, you might see as Mother Mary, you might see her as Isis, you might see her as Kuan Yin, or, everybody will experience it in the form that they can relate to. And when I first went to Oregon to work with Nicki, I was kind of on the plane thinking, well, I don't know any of the Egyptian allies. I'm just going to use my own and pretend.
I swear, it's Egyptian.
Yeah. And so exactly. And then the main ally founder, spirit ally of the alchemical healing work is Thoth. Who is an Egyptian wonderful being, and he brought that work in. And when I met him the first time, in the first moments of Nicki's teaching, he showed up as one of my main allies in a different form. And then he just kept warping back and forth to the one I'm familiar with and the Egyptian form, and basically laughed at me and said, I'm the same thing, silly, so let's just do this.
So I already knew what you were planning. So we've got this worked out. So have you been to Egypt? Because I know Nicki used to lead kind of like tours and show people sacred spots and things like that. Did you go on one of those excursions?
I did, unfortunately not with Nicki, but Indigo, who's a colleague in this work, she took over for Nicki in the Egypt tours. Of course, we're going right now,
right?
With what's going on in the world. But I did go with Indigo, and again, another life-changing experience. Egypt is just such an ancient place and there's so much tremendous history and energy there that anyone that would go there it just oozes out of the monuments. And
I was going to ask you, as a sensitive person, as an energy sensitive person, did it just feel like the whole place was crackling, vibrating with history and spiritual energy? Because it's one of my, life goals is to get there. And I imagine for me that's what it would feel like, because I love it so much and have all the understanding. So it's like when you're there, it must feel like super powerful.
It is super powerful, super, super powerful. And in the sacred sites, of course, the cities, and, that's a whole nother experience
sure.
of just the regular everyday life there, which actually is eye-opening and a good experience as well. But in the sacred sites themselves, it's just a tremendously amazing experience that everyone will receive at whatever their, wherever they're at and whatever their needs are. But it also, I would have to say, like Indigo does such a tremendous job and Nicki did too, at guiding you through the being present to receive that when you're there. So that bit of held space and information when you're there makes that experience all more beautiful and poignant.
Yeah, I'm sure having somebody there to translate in a way for you is incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
So you're now teaching what Nicki Scully taught you as of 2014.
Yes.
And
it's just,
so what is your school called, or is it referred by Shamanic Journeys? How does that work?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I've been just thinking about naming, because my first, of course, what I taught first was yoga. So right now my business is called Serenity Now Yoga, but it in no way translates into who I am and what I do now. So I've been sort of welcoming that new name that encompasses all of that, but hadn't come to me yet.
Well, we had a guest on a few episodes ago, Tyler Panor. He has the School of Living Astrology. He teaches a nature-based alchemical version of astrology that he pretty much intuited, but his school is all online, and you should really check it out as a template, because he also is friends with another person who has the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. So what people are doing is they're creating these curriculums and breaking them up in webinar, like web videos, and then, charging people tuition and doing it that way. And that's the structure that they're using to get their information out there. I think it'd be really beneficial for you. I'm ready.
Absolutely. And we're doing that within the Academy right now, the Alchemical Healing Academy.
Okay.
So there's a core group of us that are now doing that exact thing, is teaching the alchemical healing courses online in that way. I actually am still teaching in studio as well. So I'm doing a hybrid right now. I'm teaching both in person with with the restrictions that are in place in the moment. And then I'm also teaching everything online as well. So my yoga classes are both. They can come to the studio and online. The shamanic journeying that I'm about to teach is both. You can come or you can hook up online. I'm teaching the shamanic mysteries of Egypt in January online. And my colleagues Indigo and Debbie are teaching the Sekhmet transformation of in the belly of the goddess in the new year as well online. So yeah, we're definitely all headed that way.
So look, I got to ask you this question because this comes up so much in occult, esoteric circles when you start talking about Egyptian, the Egyptian situation with the deities and stuff. Is the name Aleister Crowley always pops up? He somehow put himself into the common understanding of Egyptian religions. Like, what is your opinion on Aleister Crowley and his role in getting that information out there? Because some people, it's like some people are like totally against him, and some people think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's really, it really just depends on people's perspective. I just really don't know. For me, the jury's still out because of all the research that I've done. I've seen positive things, I've seen negative things. I just don't know, but I know that his whole experience, his religion that he created, is all based on his journeying to Egypt and what he experienced in the temple, or excuse me, the pyramid, and that. Mm-hmm. So what is your opinion on that?
My opinion, I guess, on that would be that I think everyone should have that experience and then share in a way that allows people to have their own experience, and with enough foundational knowledge that gives you that opportunity, but not manipulate others' experience, so to speak, right? So you stay in that middle ground where you receive the overlying teachings, share those, and in a way that allows others to actually have their own experience and receive their whatever it is that they're needing out of it.
Because he feels like he got his information from Thoth directly through a spirit called Awas. I mean, do you feel like it's valid? Do you feel like it's valid for him, maybe, or what do you think about that?
Oh, it's totally valid to receive information. I hang it with Thoth a lot.
Right. So, which is why I brought it up.
Yeah, right. And he's the main guide in the work, in the alchemical healing work that I do. And he shows up in many other forms through other people as well. And he's got a big job to do. So the teachings, he's sharing teachings through many people. And I guess my take on it is for everybody, including in my own classes. I pretty much tell everybody, just be open to receiving whatever it is that seems like truth to you, and just let go of the rest, right? So there's golden nuggets in every teaching that people can receive, and then you just let the other stuff go.
So why is it that Egypt is so powerful? They were a civilization, they tapped into deeply spiritual things thousands of years ago, but they weren't the first civilization. There were civilizations before that, but it seems like spiritual people, metaphysical people, occult people, they love Egypt. They're deeply attracted to Egypt. And I'm guilty of that myself. I'm deeply attracted to Egypt. And what do you think it is about that culture, about what they learned that makes Egypt so powerful?
Well, I think those are the mysteries that we're all trying to solve.
Well, what I have noticed, Nick, is that the people that are deeply spiritual, love, compassionate, understanding, they're super into divinity. They sync up with a lot of the Egyptian magic and the Egyptian mysteries. Yeah. And then on the flip side, the people that are into dark spirituality, they're into potentially things like human sacrifice. They're into very dark things. They are also attracted to Egypt and use Egyptian symbolism and things like that. Why is that? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. I just don't understand, because it attracts both sides of the spiritual spectrum.
Right. Well, I can tell you this, that when attention is given to anything, it grows in power.
Okay.
Right. So, for thousands and thousands of years, I mean, originally there was obviously an incredible power in Egypt. And then since then, attention has been given to it. Right. No matter, what perspective it's coming from, it's still attention that feeds it, so to speak. And it becomes stronger and stronger and more available for others to tap into. So it becomes this sort of superpower that is accessible if you choose to.
So it's just, we're just kind of like putting the energy in, the psychic energy, the spiritual energy on both sides of the spiritual spectrum. And then both sides are then drawing from it because it's starting to become this bigger battery, this bigger reservoir. Just because we're humans and we're putting the energy in. That's so funny.
Yeah.
We're such strange animals, aren't we? The human. We're so beautiful. We're so powerful. We have so much potential. But at the same time, we're also so strange.
I totally agree. And, you know, I mean, that in itself is what you give attention to, right? So whatever you give your attention to is what you're feeding and what you're creating.
Right. That's really interesting. You know, it seems like there's really a struggle right now for the collective consciousness to be controlled by certain factions. It just seems like it's a global thing where different factions are pulling on the collective consciousness of humanity to shape reality and make it a certain way. It's a really interesting time we're living in.
It is. I feel like we're on the cusp of the shift out of that.
Yes.
So right now there's this. So we're right now there's this intensity building of that energy, like clawing and holding on for its dear life because it doesn't want to give up the control. But there's so many others. I just had an advanced alchemical healing class 2 weekends ago, and we just we did this collective healing that was so incredibly powerful, and there's so many people doing that too. So again, what are you feeding? So we're feeding the energy that will help to balance and hopefully eventually tip the scales, right? Yes. Into where we want to go in as a society that honors and respects and everything on this planet.
Yeah, I often tell our listeners, and we talk about this a lot on the show, is that I personally believe that we're moving towards a heaven on earth scenario, a conflict-free world where we're all united and living together with the spirituality, with all the high technology and the cool stuff that we love, but without the conflict. Like I said, I've been telling people it's been coming forever. I feel it coming, and all of this seems like the birthing of that.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's pains of childbirth.
Yeah, sure. Getting back to, like you were saying, it's the most beautiful experience, but it was also painful, right?
Yes, exactly.
And we have so much potential as humans. The shamanic journeying that you do shows you and has shown you that we have so much potential. Why is humanity stifled? Why does there seem to be forces at play that are stifling humanity's evolution? Is it really just the old world refusing to die, or is it something bigger?
Fear and greed, I would say.
Fear and greed.
Fear of loss of control. So there's control and greed. Yeah.
And I've noticed that a lot of these people that want the control, they never really integrate the divine experience into their life. So it's like they're trying to paint a picture without all the information, and they think they have the complete image when in fact they're missing the most important part.
Exactly.
So how do we reconnect with that? What are some of the advice or techniques that you would recommend to reconnect with the greater spirit of the world?
Well, one of the easiest and most profound teachings through Nicki and the Alchemical Healing is something, just a very a small or short, well, it hasn't been called small because it's endless, but it's called the heart breath. And it's a way to come into, because ultimately it's the vibration of love that's going to change everything.
Right.
Love and compassion. And so the heart breath starts with coming into your own heart, and then you consciously tap into above and below and draw those energies within the heart, and then experience that both receiving those energies and then the union of those energies. And so first it always starts with ourselves, right? Create that center, and then you can share it out. So then you can continue doing the heart breath. So it's really, that's what I work with that a lot with taking groups through, intentionally sending love and healing and whatever's needed to a situation with the heart breath alone. is then once you come into that place for yourself, then as you continue working with the heart breath, you continue drawing in from above and below, and then send through the heart to a situation or a person or whatever it is you're called to send to. And you can't go wrong. That's not manipulation, right? It's just all love and healing. So, it's so powerful. It ripples out and changes, even if we're not aware of what those changes are.
So how many students, so you have a class that you're or school, the Alchemical Healing Academy that you're a part of, is that correct?
Yes.
And then you're teaching classes. So, somebody is interested in your classes. Like, how do they find you? Just for that, to learn from you in that sense.
Yeah. So usually, my website is serenityNowYoga.ca, and all of what I offer is there. I'd like to say I keep up with my Facebook page, but I'm not so good at that.
That's okay.
And so my website is the best way to go there. Nicki's website, shamanicjourneys.com, also has listed the upcoming teachings through those that are in the academy. So that would be a good place to go if you're looking for not just mine, but all of what the academy is offering at any given time.
Amazing. Well, that's really good to know, because I know that people are going to be interested. They're going to want to know more, and we'll touch on it again at the end of the podcast. One thing I want to ask you about is, we love to talk about on this podcast, we love to talk about extraterrestrials. We love to talk about aliens. And of course, the alien experience is supposedly a huge part of the Egyptian experience. I know that a lot of the pharaohs believe that their bloodlines and their DNA may have had extraterrestrial DNA, or the DNA of the gods, as they said. What's your take on that? Do you think that there's an extraterrestrial component to the Egyptian experience?
I'm not sure that I would call it extraterrestrial. I would, I guess, let me welcome the right sort of title. The origin, well, I guess you could call it extraterrestrial, because to me, it's more like Star Nation. So just a nation from beyond that definitely they're always trying to help us. I mean, it would be ridiculous to think that we're the only ones in the universe.
Of course, yeah, that's insanity. That's caveman talk. We're not cavemen anymore.
Yeah.
So you're thinking it's more of an extra dimensional thing, where these spirits, these beings are actually coming from another dimension and may have influenced the early civilization of Egypt.
Yeah, and still are.
And do you think, though, that they took a physical form and maybe somehow had some of their DNA get in the mix of the Egyptian DNA?
Well, there's many writings and teachings out there that in some way is true. So I don't discount it, and there seems to be a truth to it to me in some way. So can't prove it.
Right. But, and then there's another theory, of course, that Thoth is the same representation as Hermes Trismegistus. These teachers, these ancient teachers of different cultures all around the world, but really that those people were an extension of potential Atlantean culture that had fallen. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's more realistic for you? Is there an Atlantean component to the Egyptian story?
There absolutely is.
Okay, so let's hear more about that. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I guess it's through my own interactions. Well, from some of my reading, there's the Flower of Life by Drew Balogh. He's got a lot of really interesting information on exactly what we've been talking about here. So kind of opened my eyes to it in the beginning, and he works with Thoth too. It was through Thoth that he channeled the information in those books, and then just that opening of the door then led me to have shamanic experiences, both in Atlantis and the recognition of the sort of origins of Thoth, and how there's definitely an evolution and a connection point from there upward for sure.
So were the Atlanteans, were they physical beings, or were they half physical, half ethereal? What was Atlantis?
Well, exactly what we were talking about is they were a hybrid. They were a hybrid of star nations, or right. Mm-hmm.
So then from Atlantis, they then sent emissaries out who then started cultures around the world. I mean, there's a common thread of this information of these mythical, mysterious people showing up and teaching them everything: math, agriculture, religion, the whole shebang of the human experience. And then they just disappear. But there's this common thread, and it could be potentially the same person or the last emissaries of Atlantis. I don't know if you've ever heard of Manly P. Hall, but Manly P. Hall, he's an incredible lecturer, incredible teacher, very well renowned. He died in 1990, one of the greatest teachers ever of all time. He has incredible lectures on YouTube. He did a lecture on Atlantis, and from his perspective, he says the emissaries went out, and then while they were gone, Atlantis fell. And it wasn't Atlantis itself, but it was the last vestiges of a previous way bigger civilization, but they were still calling themselves Atlantis. Do you think that could be possible as well?
There are many possibilities.
Right.
Absolutely. There's definitely truth to that in the emissaries going out. Uh-huh. And of course, if they're out, at some point Atlantis fell. So they were, they were already out and about, thank goodness. So we didn't lose all of that. So
yeah, I'm just thankful all the information's there. I mean, it really is. I mean, when you talk about the Akashic records and you just talk about how we were speaking about earlier, how energy just doesn't die. This information, all actions are stored somewhere. All the information's out there somewhere, and you can tap into it through various techniques. Yeah. Now, is that something that you teach, how to tap into the Akashic records, or how to tap into the universal knowledge storage base?
Absolutely. And actually, it's part of many of the shamanic mystery teachings that are actually, we touch on that in alchemical healing, but then in the Sekhmet work and the shamanic mysteries of Egypt, there's specific journeys that take you to that experience. So absolutely.
Oh, wow. So the shamanic mysteries just kind of defines the various things that you're trying to learn and just some of the energies and archetypes you've interacted with. But the journeying is actually the techniques and the method of getting to the mysteries. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the shamanic mysteries of Egypt there's 2 rounds of basically an alchemical process. It takes you through renewing your heart, and each journey has so there's I don't know 10, 11 journeys in each heart, and it takes you through a series that build on each other, and through it. It's actually quite if you're looking for to build a relationship with some of the allies and understand their natures, the shamanic mysteries of Egypt is perfect because each journey sort of focuses on one of the Egyptian pantheon, who they are, what they offer, how they can help you, and then takes you on a journey to meet them, and they help you through an experience. And then each experience builds on each other, and it accumulates until you reach that alchemical gold at the end of the process.
Interesting. Wow, this is so fascinating. I just thank you so much again for being on the podcast. It's been so amazing. We got plenty of time left, so there's so much more we want to talk about. What are some of the things you personally, as a spiritual person, as a teacher, what are some of the things that you feel like people should know right now to get us to the heaven on earth world that we're talking about? What are some of the things that people need to integrate?
I think people the first thing is coming into your own power in some way, finding those tools that suit you in a way to coming into that own power, where it's shamanic journeying or physical exercise like yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong or that bring you into an energetic sense and actually time in nature. If you pause and just be in nature, there's so much there to that teaches you. We're just usually walking too fast and thinking about other things and not pausing and actually being, because we are part of nature.
Right.
It's who we are.
Yeah, it's very, very
So
basic, you would think, but.
Yeah, well, we're so many of us are removed from nature. But so I live in nature. I live in a rural setting. I live close to nature, and that's part of what keeps me grounded in the work, right? So, I mean, you can go way out there and do all kinds of things, but you got to walk in this world too. So you got to keep a foot in both worlds, and nature does that for you.
Yes, that's a very good point. You do have to keep your foot in both worlds, because that's the true multidimensional perspective. Because people always talk about what it means to be a multidimensional human or live a multidimensional life. It's not this etheric, wow, I'm this multidimensional person. No, it's you're taking information from all these different levels and you're incorporating that into your being, and then using that perspective to choose how you treat other people or choose how you react to a certain situation. So important to get in contact with nature. And, I mentioned the School of Living Astrology earlier. That is how Tyler Penor, he intuited his version of astrology. He went out in nature, deep nature, and meditated, and it all came to him through that way. It's a very successful school and perspective. So connecting with nature, how do you think, what's a very basic way for people to connect with divinity that you could help people understand? Because some people think it's so ethereal. It's so hard to connect with, whatever. Some people call it God or the creator, what a Jah, if you're Rastafarian, whatever it is for you, it's hard. People kind of don't know how to connect with that in an authentic way. How do we help people?
Actually, I would say the heart breath, because it's because we are tapping into that energy. We're tapping into the universal energy, bringing it within our hearts and experiencing it. And it's a way that, you don't have to give it a name. You don't have to give it a face. And it's a way to actually experience it for yourself. And just the heart breath itself continues to grow with you and change with you and take you farther and deeper and stronger into who you are. And that sense of knowing that you're more than just this physical body, that you have a connection and are a soul that's greater, and has a connection into the greater, whatever name you would like to call that.
Right. The heart breath, the bigger, the source, that's a good one, because it just kind of strips away any religious connotations. It's just source. Exactly. Source of all life. Exactly. And it's love. Actually, I think we can say it's love, right? Can we,
Absolutely.
I don't like to go too far out on a limb when describing the divine experience, but I will say love is okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's another reason why the heart breath is so effective, because that's the core of it is bringing it into your heart. So having that experience at whatever level you're at is key. And it's a tool that you can use multiple times a day, stay grounded, and have it grow with you, and use it for so many different applications once you develop that ability.
So
or really allow it.
Yeah. So you're in contact with these beings, you're feeling these presences, you're getting information from outside. So I have to ask you, because I know this is on the tip of so many people's minds right now, what is the information that you're getting telling you about the immediate future? Does it feel like there's something really positive coming soon? What are the next 5 years look like? 5 to 10 maybe?
Yeah, completely something positive coming. There's like this, so right now we're in this, you can feel that resistance to what's happening, but underneath it, there's just this almost excitement and anticipation of what's rising. So absolutely, we're headed somewhere great. And all we need is enough people to hold that vibration of love, right? That's the tipping point. So the more people do the heart breath, the more people engage in spiritual practices that give them that experience of divine or source, just creates this collective energy that balances and eventually will become the norm.
So you believe in the 100th monkey phenomenon, that if enough people raise their vibration, if enough people push that love energy into the quantum field, that will pull everybody else up into our resonant frequency, and they'll all be there with us. Do you believe that?
Hell yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Some people don't. Some people have this very pessimistic. I'm an optimist. I'm a Libra. I'm always an optimist. But some people have the pessimistic outlook that, you know, some people are beyond repair. They're beyond hope. Well, I don't believe that at all. I believe that there's a forgiveness, that's a universal law that will correct these kind of imbalances of how certain people live their lives. But some people will believe that they're just beyond help. And if we raise our vibration, that some of those people won't be included. But I don't think that that's the case.
No. So I don't think so either. In fact, I mean, whenever we do any kind of, group work for any kind of collective healing, if there's an energy of resistance, we turn to it with love. We offer, because what that resistance or the other energy is, its basis, underlying basis is some kind of wounding, right? Some kind of trauma that put them in the position of being in that, where they are at and what they're projecting and how they're living.
Right. Something happened.
They
weren't born that way.
What they need is, they need support. They need love. They need a safe space, and forgiveness. Absolutely. Forgiveness is such a huge part of healing for all of us.
You know, it's hard because when you think about people that have experienced, the horrific aspects of this life, like murder and things like that, it's very hard for them to be like, how do you forgive the murderer? But when you have the love and the compassion and the understanding to know that you don't know what happened to that person's life between them being a baby and them committing the crime that led them to have that life. You're just remembering that little baby that came out that was almost like the Christ consciousness, like just this beautiful, pure living being. And that's who you're kind of looking at when you're doing your forgiveness.
That's exactly what I teach. Exactly. So, just take the face off, see them in their light body, that Christ consciousness, and then have that interaction of forgiveness. Because ultimately, forgiveness is about releasing us from trauma and pain. It actually has nothing to do with the other person. The other person still has their karma, like they still have to work through their stuff, right? They carry their own chains and they, right? So it doesn't exonerate anything, right? But what it does is heal us from the trauma. It releases us from those chains.
That's interesting because most people don't realize that. They think you're kind of releasing the other person from your judgment, when in fact you're opening your heart and you're releasing what you were holding the entire time. And it's because you're the one holding it.
Yeah, some acts are absolutely unacceptable, and that doesn't mean it was okay for it to happen. But it's that knowing that person didn't know any better in the background that brought them to that, or there's just that understanding and compassion that they just weren't in a level of consciousness that they could do any better at the moment. And again, it's not about making it okay. It's about releasing you from it and inviting them to be a better person so that it never happens to anyone else again.
Yeah, and that's how we heal as a species. That's how we unite and get this wonderful earth that we want to happen, this wonderful collective place, where we're out there spreading love and light throughout the universe. In order to get there, we got to shake off all the old stuff, and we have to be able to forgive. But it's hard. We're humans in a certain level of development. I mean, sometimes I like to joke around and say we're halfway between caveman and Star Trek. We're like kind of right in the middle point, but I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit farther along. Where do you think we're at in our evolutionary path?
Oh, geez. That's actually pretty good.
Well, it kind of feels that way. We have, some of the tribalism, the primitive mindsets, but then at the same time, we have the advanced technology.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So are we farther along though? Is it just kind of like maybe just a couple more turns around the corner and we'll be that wonderful species that we want to be so bad?
Well, I think we're in the shake-up and breakup phase right now.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that doesn't last too damn long.
Right.
Right. But we all have choices, and right. So it's up to each individual I mean, they call it the great pause, what's happening in our world right now. I didn't get much of a pause, but what it's doing is asking people to have a look and make changes. So it's up to every individual to then, become aware of perhaps what's not working in their lives and choose to make changes that are not only better for themselves, for their families, for their environment, and everyone around them.
Yeah, it's a good time for reflection. It's really if you look at it in a greater sense, it's a deep point of reflection of how we treat each other, our paradigms that we have in place, our consumption habits. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm horrified by cardboard boxes. Like when I see a pile of cardboard boxes, it makes me want to cry because I'm just like, that was like some trees, some beautiful trees, and now it's just a pile of cardboard boxes. We haven't evolved past cardboard boxes yet. Like, come on. Like, we got a little bit to go.
Yeah. So there's many changes that need to happen out there. That's for sure.
Hey, well, I think we have to be honest with ourselves because, we as humans, whether we like it or not, we like to consume things. We like to purchase things. We like to have things that are nice, whether it's artwork or a really nice crystal or whatever you're into. We have to be honest that we do like those things, but change the way those things are made. Maybe we shouldn't use trees. Maybe we shouldn't use rare earth minerals. Maybe we'll get to the point where we can just program energy to be matter, and then we can have whatever we want. But we have to get past that. And we also have to understand that anything's possible within the divine experience. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
Absolutely. And again, it starts at home, right? So I choose to buy, go things without packaging and as much as possible. And right. So again, when we all start to make those decisions, it's together that we have power, right? It starts at home with ourselves, but then that ripples out when more and more people are making those same choices. Then things just have to change. It's inevitable.
Right. And unless there's those nefarious forces that want to stifle it so bad, but it is eventually it's kind of like a tidal wave. There's just nothing that's going to stop it because you have divinity on your side. When you're doing good, when we're in the spirit of evolution and growth, you have God on your side. So when you have God on your side, there's not really much that you can't accomplish.
Absolutely, completely agreed. And when you're staying heart-centered in your connection with God and your intention on whatever it is that you're putting out there is for the highest good of everyone involved, then you're good to go.
Yeah, and that's what this podcast is about. We're about getting people like you on, these stellar guests that have so much cool things to say to people to get it out there for people so they can learn from it, so they can grow. That's the entire intention of this thing. And because we really want that world that me and Nick are talking about, we know you want it too out there. We know you want that world where we're all together, there's no conflict, and we're just living in love. Can you imagine that when the earth is in love, like we're in love with each other, it's coming. It's right there. It's just a little bit off, but we can correct it. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what Nick's trying to do with her school and everything that she's about. So, we've got about 15 minutes left. Usually at this time of the show, we try to give our guests a chance to say something closing, something that's profound, something that you really want to get out to the world. So this is your chance. This is your podium. You can say whatever you want. What are some of the things that you personally want to get out to people all around the world?
First of all, I want to thank you for helping put this out to everyone. It's right, because the more people we reach, then right, it's just I'm in a little spot here in rural Ontario, Canada. So, and I've been growing a community, but the more we grow, the greater the chances are of that universal or the collective shift. And I guess in everything I do, it's just it's always about empowering that for people within themselves, giving the people tools. In fact, with Alchemical Healing, I have many people that take just level 1, just to learn, become introduced to that connection and awareness within themselves and their energy bodies and how to manage their own energy. So many don't go past level 1 in alchemical healing, nor do they need to, because what they needed was their personal tools. Right, so it's personal tools that I'm all about giving people. I'm not wanting to carry you on my back. I want to teach you the tools that I can walk beside you and answer questions every once in a while, and empower you to be able to handle whatever it is that arises in your life. I mean, sometimes we get hit by tsunamis, and sometimes our environment, like what's been happening with many people in the last year. Is very difficult if you don't have tools. You don't have tools to manage your own emotions, if you don't have tools to manage the energy around you and not take it on, so to speak. So many people are empathic and don't really realize that it's not their anxiety, it's the anxiety of everyone around you that you're sensing, or it heightens that. So teaching discernment and boundaries and tools to manage what arises within you and around you are key. And that's pretty much why I've got a few different things that I offer through the alchemical healing, through the shamanic work, through the yoga and meditation. In fact, I sort of rotate through meditations, and once a month I do a forgiveness meditation because it's so important. I do sound healing with crystal bowls once a month because the vibration and sound is incredible, and that's sort of the entrainment. That actually makes me think of the entrainment that we were talking about earlier. So it's that, when enough people come together and create that, well, we know what happens. Like when there's a bunch of grandfather clocks in a room and they're all ticking at different, eventually they're all going to start to entrain and start to unify and come into that same tick-tock. And that's what happens with energy and vibration, because everything at the basis of every single thing on this planet is a vibrating energy. So when we work with sound, harmonics, and energy, and invite that entrainment, then it's absolutely possible. Actually, that can be measured by science. So if you need to satisfy your science mind, you can put that underneath it. But yeah, so I guess I offer experiences for people to just come and receive what they need to feel good and balanced. I do personal healing sessions for people to walk them through. That's the other piece about alchemical healing is that I don't find is, not in my experiences in any other healing modality, is that the person stays, I stay in contact with the person throughout the entire experience, because what's most important is for them to have their own experience. If I'm just, seeing spirit eyes and watching things and noticing removal and they're not involved in it at all, at the end I just say, hey, all this cool stuff happened. And they're kind of like, okay, right on. But during the healing, if I say, okay, I'm sensing this, what are you sensing? Bring their attention to it. Invite them to sense it in whatever way that they can. And then also invite them to sense the shift or the transformation or the removal or the receiving, whatever the case may be. Their subconscious body absolutely receives that. They know it happened. They had the experience. It empowers them then to be able to do that again for themselves. And then the physical changes. When we shift what's happening energetic and the subconscious mind experiences something, the physical body responds and changes to whatever that experience was.
So let's say a person is like not spiritual at all, but they're hearing this podcast and they're super attracted to what you're into. You don't really need any pre-spiritual knowledge to start shamanic training. Is that correct?
Correct. Zero. Yep.
So you can just go right in and cold and you're interested but you're not really a spiritual person yet, but you want to learn. It doesn't matter where you're at. Shamanic training is there for you, especially the shamanic training that you offer.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the beauties about shamanism and shamanic training is that it is all encompassing, and there's so many truths across the board. Like, I mean, it is the oldest spirituality, shamanism. We can trace it back farther than anything else. And the fact that longevity has lasted, and the fact that many cultures across the globe have underlying similar practices which is the journey, whether you do it by drum or didgeridoo or song or trance or whatever. It's all about that journey. So there's this underlying truth that, and you will, that is, it is both powerful and brings the experiences that you need in any given moment.
It just kind of gives the person what they need at that time.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where they're coming from, what their religious background or spirituality background is, because whatever allies, whatever help they're going to meet is going to show up in a way that they can receive it. So it meets you where you're at. So
let's say some people are coming from a Christian background. Are some of their allies like saints or even Jesus?
Hell yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I can tell you. Well, funny story is, so the first thing you do is meet, let me just ask, because there's a humility involved in shamanism, and you generally don't sort of brag about who your allies are. You don't brag about it at all, actually. So I'm just going to check in with that, see if it's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, good.
So the first thing you generally do is meet your power animals or spirit animal, and then the next thing you do is meet a spirit guide when you're first learning to journey. And then I grew up in Catholicism and had let that go many years before that, and really wasn't practicing any other spiritualism when I first did shamanism. And then so the very first spirit guide that I met up with was Jesus. And I looked at him and was like, what the hell are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. I'm doing shamanic work.
Right. This is anti-Catholicism. This is right? The devil. This is supposed to be the devil's work, actually.
Yeah, but it was absolutely perfect because it helped me to open up to that Christ energy without all the dogma, right? So it was exactly what I needed at the time. It helped open me up and release, whatever was preventing me from being open to that energy that is such powerful and powerful and beautiful.
It's a really funny story because your first ally kind of shows up and it's Jesus. And it's just kind of showing you that the Jesus experience, the Christ consciousness, is so much bigger than religion. It's so much bigger than we could possibly imagine. And the funny thing is that we can tie in is that, hey, people don't realize Jesus lived in Egypt between the ages of 18 and 33. Not only was he the first hippie, but he was actually in ancient Egypt. He was the first Egyptian hippie, because you see these hippies now and they wear they got the cool Egyptian necklaces and the really cool like clothes motifs. But let me tell you who the first guy was that was in Egypt being a hippie and a Christian. His name was Jesus. He was there. So he tapped into some of those Egyptian mysteries that you're teaching. I think that's part of the Jesus story, I believe.
I agree.
And it's just so funny to think that what came out of it, not the Christianity of the first 100 years, but the Catholicism and the mainstream Christianity that we see today really downplays the Egyptian experiences. I was like, oh, that's just satanic pantheism or whatever, however they classify it. But in fact, it's the root of their own religion. The irony is so crazy. Yeah, you can make a freaking steel gate out of the amount of iron that's there. Yeah. Irony. But I just want to say thank you. Okay, so look, here we go. You can find Nick at serenitynowyoga.ca. If you want to learn and take these courses to become a shaman and get the shamanic understanding, look up the Alchemical Healing Academy. You'll find everything that she's about on serenitynowyoga.ca. Eventually things might change, but that's where it is all right now. So if you're interested worldwide, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, doesn't matter your time zone. If you're interested, go to that website, read everything, and sign up. Learn about this. Learn about this and make it a part of you. Because this interview is changing me. I just gained so much from this interview. I hope all of you out there listening gain something from this interview. And of course, we're going to have Nicole back in the future, she will come back and we'll do another interview. How do you feel about that, Nicole? Can we have you back?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm going to play the outro music and then hold on online and we're going to keep you on and we'll talk a little bit afterward. We'll see you next episode, everybody. This is Midnight on Earth. Have a great day.